Hello, I'm John Felt. Welcome to the NCGA-FMC Agricultural Weather Outlook for December 15th, 2013. Well, here's been this story I've been talking about for a long time. These are current temperatures. Purple and blue are the cold temperatures, colder than normal, and the red is the warmer temperatures. And we've had this area here just sort of sagging to the south. This area is just sagging to the south for quite some time. The cold air has been moving down into this area, so we're getting extremely cold temperatures below normal in the upper Midwest. But anywhere in blue, really, it's extending below normal temperatures. And it's really just the southeast U.S. where we find temperatures above normal. Now, I wanted to talk just a bit. This is a satellite picture. It's what I call a water vapor, and it measures the mid and upper level moisture in the atmosphere. And about the only reason I'm showing this now is because the areas in brighter colors are the mid and upper level atmospheric moisture. And usually in wintertime, the cold season, our precipitation comes from mid and upper level moisture and not as much from low level moisture. Now, summertime, it's low level moisture. So we sometimes look at water vapor images to get an idea of how much moisture is in the atmosphere. This system is going to be moving across the upper Midwest. It's been pretty active in that region into the Great Lakes. Here's another system exiting off to the east, and the dark shades here indicate dry conditions, very dry mid and upper level atmosphere. So the takeaway from this is just keep in mind that a lot of our precipitation, snow or rain, comes from mid and high level moisture. So the number of rain days, just a quick look at where it's been active. Green indicate days when there's been more than 3 days of precipitation, and brown indicates areas that have been relatively dry. So good part of the central and eastern corn belt, looks like we have those yellows and greens, and that's indicating it has been pretty active last week. And we definitely had a pretty widespread snow event last week over central and eastern corn belt. The upper part of the corn belt was quiet with just a one rain day, and in many cases no rain days or snow days at all. So if we look at how much liquid precipitation occurred over the last 7 days, you can see that dividing line very clear here. Here's this dividing line, and pretty much east of that line was very active with snow, freezing rain, and even rain over the southeast. Up in the upper Midwest, we had this active area of snow here, but that was more of a typical snow event. Everywhere else, there was some light amount of snow, but it was generally fairly light. So if we look at where precipitation, the percent of normal, areas in red indicate below normal precipitation, while areas in blue indicate above normal precipitation. Now, every once in a while, it's important to step back and look at the big picture. And this is the departure from normal for the last 30 days. And I look at this sometimes to determine what areas are getting excess precipitation, which ones are getting deficits of precipitation. That'll come into play as an important factor as we get into the spring. So despite the additional snow this week, look at this here. This area of Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, when we look at the last 30 days, has still experienced a deficit of an inch or so of liquid precipitation. Now, the upper Midwest, the upper corn belt, this area in green here, they've gained about an inch of extra precipitation that might be beneficial or not, depending on how much still occurs later this winter. And I will be updating this in my briefings and in other communications throughout the winter months on how we stand, because I'm really focused on growing conditions next spring. Now, as you know, temperatures have been unusually cold. One of my colleagues I was talking to recently was talking about how he expects it to remain cold over the entire winter, and we're certainly going that way. I put out some information on that in my last newsletter, that possibility. But right now, this is last week, and blue and purple are areas that average below normal. Now look at that purple. That's 6 degrees or more below normal. So North Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, unusually cold for this time of year. Now the eastern part of the Corn Belt, Ohio, parts of Indiana, a little bit closer to normal, but still averaging around 2 to 4 degrees below normal. So look how much snow fell last week. Now, most of it was fairly light. This is up to 6 inches, these little dots here in purple. But look how much snow. Almost the entire Corn Belt last week received some degree of snow. And the heaviest snow is in this band right here that extended from around St. Louis up toward Chicago, and then another band in the Great Lakes. You can see the Lee effect snow along the Great Lakes at green dots are 12 to 18 inches of snow. Now, if you want to see how much snow's on the ground, the current snow depth, look at this. Now, snow depth is important as well, as you know, because if we have an unusually cold winter, it's going to hold it on the ground a little bit longer, and it could be that as we get towards spring, we have a greater contribution due to snow melting. But we'll see. That's way off there right now. I did want to point out that the heaviest snow is right here over northern parts of Wisconsin, Minnesota, North Dakota. But this is a fairly significant snow that fell just over the last week over central and eastern parts of the Corn Belt. And if you want to see how much water equivalent is in that snow, really look at the darker purples. This area right here, and then this area up in the upper Midwest. That's getting to be a significant amount of water equivalent in that snowpack. Actually, that's nearly 1 to 2 inches in the area over the middle part of the nation, and even more up to the north. And that'll change as we get some melting and additional snow. But that is currently that band over central or southern Missouri into southern Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. Pretty extensive liquid equivalent in that area. Okay, now here are the steering winds. You might recall that I said that the colorful shadings, the reds, indicate the strongest winds, and that is the most energy that can produce precipitation. So right now we have that system that's exiting the east. Here's another one moving in from the northwest, and that's going to impact the upper Midwest and parts of the central U.S. this week. Now by late this week, we have area out to the west that's going to be moving through, and that's going to be bringing in colder air again as we get into next week. So that's going to eventually mean a reinforcement of the cold air either late this weekend, more likely next week. Now, when I look at the surface low tracks here, I really don't see any really strong lows or developed lows, so there will be some precipitation over the Corn Belt. But right now, it doesn't look like anything all that significant because I just don't see that strong a system this week. Having said that, here's your forecast for rainfall and snow, the precipitation forecast. Right now, it looks like the only band where significant precipitation is expected to occur is right in this area. So it really looks like Ohio and southern Indiana within the Corn Belt are the areas that are expected to get the heaviest precipitation. And that could be over 2 inches of precipitation. Now, I wanted to mention that this is what we look at. We call them thickness lines. These are the rain snow lines. This is as of Friday. And north of these lines, it's cold enough for all snow. South of it, all rain, and then along it could be a mix. And what I want to point out here is that the atmosphere, both at the surface and aloft, will be moderating a bit this week, that it looks like that precipitation that I just mentioned will be in the form of liquid precipitation or rain, and then as the cold air comes through, some lighter snow behind it. So it should be moderating enough that that band of 1 to 2 inches will be liquid. But there will be some snow around. Snow accumulations are indicated here over the next week. Upper Midwest, that area is building a pretty good snowpack, another 2 to 4 inches possible. Some lighter amounts in the colder air behind that front, 1 to 3 inches. Everywhere else, that light precipitation will be in the colder air behind the front. As far as weather hazards go over the next week, most of them deal with cold and wind as that front pushes through Thursday and Friday. Late this week, we'll be ushering in another bout of cold air, and with that, some wind. So basically no heavy precipitation threats with the exception of this heavy precipitation band Friday and then into the weekend. Now let's take a look at next week. I always look out at least a couple weeks. Right now, models are indicating a very similar pattern, mainly dry over the Corn Belt next week. The exceptions are this continued active band from especially eastern North Dakota across Minnesota into Wisconsin and along the Great Lakes, and then another action band over generally the southeast U.S. And that band could brush parts of Indiana and Ohio between this band and that band. But most of the Corn Belt, Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, looks like it should be mostly dry next week. But it does look like temperatures will remain below normal, maybe not quite as cold as we've seen, but it still looks like this trend of below normal temperatures will persist. Now here's an idea of current soil moisture conditions. It's very wet over the southeast U.S., and that's brushing part of the eastern Corn Belt. And then as we get further off to the west, it dries. Green is wet, oranges are dry. And here's the forecast for the upcoming week. I think these lighter shades are really not a whole lot of change one way or the other. So with the exception of the far eastern Corn Belt, where there could be some increase in upper soil moisture, it looks like most of the Corn Belt will experience neutral conditions over the next week. So the takeaway points from today's briefing: modest snow in the upper Midwest, once again into the Great Lakes, some modest precipitation over eastern parts of the Corn Belt. Then it looks like again next week, mostly dry and cold right towards Christmas. If you ever have any questions, here's my email. You can always contact me at this email address. And please pass this along to others if you enjoy these briefings. They're provided by the National Corn Growers Association and FMC, and its success of these briefings really depends if you can pass them on and tell others about it. I'd like to hear if you're enjoying them as well. Nice talking to you as always. I'll be updating you again next week.